An exclusive interview is investor Tom Barrack, Colony Capital founder. It's good to have you on.
Good to be back. And Becky's timeless. Nothing changes.
Good.
I love you, Tom.
What am I?
I didn't leave you out. I just didn't leave you in.
Love it.
Tom, I think one of the things we talked about off camera, were you more involved in the last Trump run and presidency than you have been this time? You've been longtime friends, obviously, with the president-elect, but I don't think you got involved this time till just a couple months ago. Is that a fact? Or, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sure. In the 2016 process, none of us knew exactly what we were doing, right? I mean, the president-elect was marching down a road. I mean, think of it. People say he's a great political athlete. He's just a great athlete. To wander from business into politics with no background, no governing experience was tough. And he did a great job, but I was very involved then and kind of just chipping away at the system. I thought it was great to have a new warrior in the middle of it, just stirring things up. And he did the best job he possibly could that first term. Then we started this process of what people are calling corruption of the justice system. I don't think it's not corrupt. These people are not corrupt. Merrick Garland is not corrupt. He's accomplished, he's educated, he's pedigreed, he's trying to do the right thing, but the system is corroded. So underneath, if you have 94 political appointees who are U.S. attorneys, and by the way, these people are sensational, right? They're 30 to 40 years old, men and women come out of the elite law schools, pedigreed. Right. It's like a rugby game. So you have a political appointed attorney general who says, I have 10,000 felony laws. I'm going to enforce them in accordance with my political belief from the president that I have. So it's like a rugby game. It's horrible. It's rugged, but they're not corrupt. The system, the FBI reports to the DOJ. Everybody cooperates with everybody. And this is what President Trump found himself in. And I got frustrated watching it after my experience, and we talked about it before, at the end of the day, the system works for all of us. But in moments, it doesn't. So you have to allow it to play out. In my case, after 2 years of serious litigation, a Brooklyn jury, who's not a fan of President Trump, a brilliant judge, who at every motion denied it for 2 years, I said, I'm going to go to Sing Sing for 40 years. This judge hates me. After 2 months of trial, one day comes back, right, complete adjudication. President Trump attacked. Everybody tried to kill him. Financially attacked, personally attacked, spiritually attacked. And the nation comes up with this incredible moment. So I came back to him because, honestly, what I learned is his instincts are so good. They really are. And all of us get frustrated because we have points of view around the edge that it seems a little bit harsh, or it seems, for instance, on some of his appointments.
Right. So give us the take on Matt Gaetz. You said his instincts you think are great. A lot of people raising their eyebrows on the Matt Gaetz piece of this, right? Right.
Well, I mean, you take the whole scene. Who he's put in place up until now. Tulsi, by the way, who I know really well, is absolutely sensational. And you have a lot of people, and you have Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel and Bill Hagerty, all these great athletes still on the side. To shake up the Department of Justice, I mean, just think about it. That is an unbelievable undertaking because the civil servants, so you have thousands of attorneys, thousands of FBI agents who also are not corrupt, but they see politicians come and go. So it's turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right.
But in terms of the trust or the distrust, right? I mean, part of this whole thing is about instilling trust in the system. Let's stipulate there's a lot of people who don't trust the system, in part because there was a worry about it was being weaponized by politicians, right? And so if we don't want that, and then there's a Matt Gaetz put in this place, the question is the perception, right? If half the country or more distrust this. By the way, I think more because there's other people even in the Republican Party who raise their eyebrows and say,
but does this
is this really the right
country?
person? Are there other people who could be loyal to the president, if you will, who might be more sensible and instill that semblance of trust and still be able to do the things you're talking about in terms of rooting out the corrosion.
Absolutely, and your analysis is exactly right. And you have to trust the president-elect's instincts. And I had this conversation with so many, living on either coast. At Halloween, I didn't have to put on a costume, right? I walk into a room, they freak out, right? There's nobody, I mean, Hollywood. I was not well received in those circles. And people used to say, why can't you just draw him back to the middle? Why can't he be reasonable? I said, he can absolutely be reasonable. He can absolutely go to the middle, but his instincts are saying that's not where America wants to be at the moment. He can draw back to that. It's the same with Matt. He has a plan, he has a reason, he has an overwhelming vote from the people to do what it is that he thinks is right. And all I'm saying is let him be him. Just let's all get behind him for a moment. He's not going to be, retribution is not what he's interested in. He's interested in vindication. And I think.
But so you don't think that if Matt Gaetz is in that role, it's a super powerful role. By the way, you lived through litigation of your own. I don't even know what that cost you. But, it was funny. I was having a conversation with my son last night. We were talking about this. And my son said, well, if the justice system works, we shouldn't have to worry. You shouldn't worry about this kind of thing. And I said, true, but you also don't want prosecutors unfairly prosecuting people because the cost is real. It is. You probably spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
You're speaking about what's already happened, or what you're worried about happening now?
Both.
Okay.
Let's stipulate
because
that.
I think that's Trump's whole reason for picking.
Right. But the question is, we're trying to root that out. Right.
You don't double down.
You don't double down, and that's the question I think about this piece.
But and you're so right. And by the way, it's millions. And this is the saddest thing, right? Is I say the system works. It works for people who have resources. By God's grace, by the way, we can say God, that's another fantastic thing at the moment, right? But by God's grace, my family had the resources to allow me to get through this. But normal people who are facing a felony, a federal felony, the conviction rate is 99.7%. They have to flip, right? Which is this whole system. All they want, you think they wanted me? What do they care about some Lebanese financial lawyer that was in private equity, right? It's not interesting to them. So you're exactly right. But I think sending a shockwave through that system, and I don't know, I can't speak for the president. Right. What I can say is he's not using up his political capital.
You think it's going to be a recess appointment? You think
yes.
Gaetz is going to be, he's going to be Attorney General?
Well, and I don't know. Again, I'm not speaking for the president.
Deputy AG important, Tom? Who do you think should
Super. Get that? And the third in place is even more important because you need somebody who understands the plumbing. Right? When you go through all of the processes of how the FBI and special investigators and classified information works, prosecutors have the grand jury. The grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, as they've always said. The defendants have no rights. But the process of what you do with a civil servant, it's the civil servants.
I mean, I think about it. If you really wanted to de-weaponize things and make sure that people weren't worried about such things, you almost think President Trump saying, okay, we're going to pardon Hunter Biden, right? Shut things down and end the process. And it's not that there aren't things that you could definitely go after him for that he's probably guilty of. The question's always been, which cases do you pick and which do you not?
Absolutely, 1,000. And we're all ready to have it over, right? And by the way, President Biden, I know him personally. I adore him.
Biden's not going to do it.
I'm sad for everything that happened. And the greatest event besides President Trump being elected was seeing President-elect Trump and President Biden shaking hands with real smiles on their faces. Wow.
That was... A lot of people talked about how real President Biden's smile was. I've never seen him really. So it was
beautiful.
It was kind of surreal.
But Becky, those things are not out of the question.
He just didn't seem unhappy.
It's not out of the question.
I wondered who he voted
for. Right?
I am. I'm not sure who he voted for. I'm not completely sure he voted for.
Yeah, because it was
Oh, I don't know about that. Let me ask you.
I'm not kidding.
Can we talk about Elon Musk?
Yes.
I'm so curious, as a business leader yourself and somebody who's been watching all of this, sort of what role you think he's ultimately going to have, what role he's had thus far in terms of maybe even being bigger than we know. There was a line in a story yesterday that said he was almost the quote-unquote co-president. How much influence he's going to be able to have in this sort of blue ribbon committee through either executive orders and the like. But then on the flip side, obviously there's going to be a lot of I imagine, bigger issues that will have to get dealt with by Congress and the Senate and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I look at it as a champion lion and a champion cheetah coming together, right? Elon Musk is, outside of the political arena, probably the most important innovator, creator, manufacturer, product creator. Think if you take Tesla, batteries, satellites, links in your brain, right? I mean, he single-handedly did more than NASA could do in 20 years. So he's thinking in a generation in a way that has to take us from bricks to bits. That's not the president-elect's main area. So in saying we have to move everybody's cheese, which he's done, right? How do these guys, they built a data center that takes 4 years and 18 days. So I think that focus, and it's not co-presidency. Nobody co-presidents with this president. We've learned that, right? I mean, it's his road, it's his path. American
Do you
people
think they will be pals at the end of the 4 years?
Yes, I do. I do. I think they respect each other in their own way.
Okay. Who do you want for Treasury?
Pardon me?
Who do you want for Treasury? Although we got to go.
Whoever the president picks.
Whoever the president picks.
I mean, you have great candidates. You have Howard Lutnick, you have Scott Bessant, you have you have Bill Haggerty that could do it himself.
Yeah. All right. Tom, thank you very much.
No,
we got some
great
data
being
coming.
with you.
Good to have you on.
Thanks.
Thank you.